Hello, my friends. Welcome. I'll do a couple of, little update things. There's been talk about this doing a live event type of thing. People are asking about meeting updates. Actually, I'll wait till Jon gets on. Yo.
Hello.
How you doing, man?
I'm good, man. I'm good. How you doing?
You got that Einstein hair going on. I like it.
It's wild. I just went for a quick walk. I don't know what happened since the shower to now, but it's there. And
I think it's
going to be there.
It's got volume. It's fabulous. You're looking great. You're looking like a studio rat that you are in your heart.
What's going on? How you feeling?
I'm feeling good, man. I wanted to go through a couple little quick things. There are a lot of questions that we can jump through real quick. People asking about the meetup. I think we've got a date range. I don't want to announce anything yet. You and I still got to have some chats about that, but it sounds like we have a date range or maybe even a date in March. I'm not sure yet if it's, I'm saying this to everybody. You and I have had this conversation. Not sure yet if it's going to be like a big event type of thing, or if it's going to be like a smaller dinner with a bunch of people who've been on the lives, and then we're going to live stream a conversation as sort of like a test meetup type of thing. We might have a small amount of people. Not sure if it's going to be a Q&A. I'll go on the LiveWithMattRad Instagram and maybe take some polls and see what people are thinking. I think the idea of doing a giant meetup as the first thing is probably not the move, especially given the state of the world, and Los Angeles being a particularly shut down type of place. But we're definitely going to do something. So that's just to update people who are asking about that.
Can't wait.
Yeah, it's gonna be great. It's gonna be a lot of fun.
I'm gonna start thinking about what the menu is gonna be.
Baby. Yeah. Oh baby, Jon's cooking.
Can't wait.
Yeah, so we'll give people updates on that as we go. Still haven't done Twitch. I'm sorry. I know I keep saying I'm gonna do it, and then
You're never gonna do it.
I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it, just like I'm doing all of these things. I'm gonna do it. But it's definitely getting pushed back. So I apologize for that. I just have been busy, and work is good. There's lots of things going on, and I've had to focus on all of that. But I still plan to do a Twitch thing, comp a vocal, maybe go through a session of a song I worked on recently, the Renau song "Nobody," which came out recently. I'm doing a bunch with this new artist in the UK. It's amazing. We actually got another song coming out soon. But he's given me approval to break open that session and do that. So I've got a couple things I'm ready to do on Twitch. I just haven't had the time to set it up and make the time for it. But I do want to do that. And the last thing is people were asking about guitars. I posted another guitar thing last night. I love the neural DSP stuff. So lots of follow-up questions about guitars. I talked to Matt Beckley, who I've had on a couple episodes talking about vocal production. Turns out he's also an amazing guitar player, toured with Katy Perry. And he's my go-to for guitars, pedals. He's a guy I consulted a lot when I was working on this James Arthur album, trying to figure out how to get great guitar sounds without just stacking up all my amps. And that's where the journey started for me with amp simulators, and I really like the neural DSP stuff. But he's been great about that. So I actually texted him this morning, said, "Hey, do you want to do a whole hour on guitars and the state of guitars right now?" So we will probably do that maybe next week, maybe another week. But people are asking about guitars. So just want to get through all that. How are you, my friend? What are you?
I'm good.
Are you
I should announce that. I should announce that I'll probably beat you to the punch, no pun intended, to doing a Twitch. So there's something. I have something in the works that I'll probably do that before you. So people can get excited for that if they want to, or they could think nothing about it and ignore me. But I'm going to do some sort of long form Twitch mixing thing with the help of some friends. Coming soon, probably within the month or so.
Within the month. Okay, cool. So people will just follow you on Instagram. You will announce it, that sort of thing.
Yes.
Okay, that sounds great. That's very exciting.
That'll be cool.
Are you mid? We got questions and things, but I figure I'd catch up with you. I haven't seen you in a couple of weeks. Are you? Are you mixing a million things? What are you?
I'm not. I'm not mixing a million things. It tends to happen every year, and I get really down about it. And this year, I'm not getting down about it because it just happens every year. But the beginning, like January, usually to early February, is a lot of people finishing up productions and then them starting to come to mix later in February. So I'm not that busy right now. And I'm attempting to keep myself busy with other things like reaching out to humans and having lunches and dinners and exercising and taking care of myself and reading and walking and, checking in on humans and doing other things as well as working. But I'm not doing like 5 songs a day right now.
Right.
So I'm actually okay with it. I wasn't okay with it 2 weeks ago. I was like, what the fuck's going on? And then like things start coming in. You're like, all right, well, this is just how it works for me. And it's happened every year and I don't know why, but no, I'm doing a bunch of other things at the moment.
It seems like, and I remember talking to Tizio about this as well. It seems like as a mixer, if you are exclusively mixing, you are more at the whim of the cycles of the record label holiday things, and people take a while to come back to work, and there aren't usually pending projects because everything is Q4. If people don't know, it's the fourth quarter, the holiday season, the shopping season. So all the big releases, everybody kind of hurries up to finish things in November so they can get things out before the holidays or around the holidays because it's the big shopping season. Although again, like it's mostly streaming now, so I don't know. Things may have changed a little bit, but the music business, no disrespect to the people who work in an office in the music business, but they seem to take forever to come back to work in January. And so by that time, then it's like, okay, what records are we working on? We're finishing up productions, and then so I've actually been working like crazy, but that's because I'm doing sessions and finishing up productions, and a lot of new artists start to get a lot of attention in the new year. So writing sessions, finishing things up, doing productions. And then, in the next few weeks is when things start to, actually last week I had 2 or 3 things sent off to mastering that I mixed and produced. So it's like starting to come back now.
And also I should add to the fact that I also am trying my best this year to work on things that fit my criteria that we have discussed in previous episodes, whether it's budget wise to how I'm feeling about the music. So I've said no more early this year to one-offs, to singles, to small little EP things, even a couple of albums that just like, they don't really have enough to make me dive in fully into it. I'm not that invested in the music enough to say yes to it. So I'm kind of using this time to practice that as well. The Twitch thing is a thing that I'm looking into. So I'm like having meetings about it and trying to plan it. So when we do it, it's maybe a little bit different than the way other people are doing it, because I don't want to just be another mixer that's live mixing and I'm like, look at my EQ. Like nobody cares about what my EQ is. And if you do, you're going to be watching it for the wrong thing, right? So I'm trying to have some sort of element of surprise or of interest in this. So I'm spending time doing that, but I'm also saying no to other things. And that's hard for me to do. So this is something new that I'm practicing, and it's going well. I'm not really thinking about it as much. Which is really cool. My manager will hit me with something and say, hey, this is what they got. Here's the song. And I'm like, I don't really know if I want to do that right now. And I'd rather, focus on other things. So,
well, you and I are at similar places. It makes sense that we're friends, even though we do pretty different things a lot of the time. I'm the kind of the same way where I'm trying to, and because I tend to do a lot more things in certain projects, although sometimes I'll just touch things briefly and let them go, whether it's a little rewrite or a mixing finish or production. But I'm trying more and more to find things that feel really interesting and exciting and then invest more time in those. So more time on fewer things. That's not necessarily advice I would give everyone everywhere in their career. I think the advice for a lot of people, again, starting out or even depending on where you are, I may be this way in 6 months where I just want to say yes to everything because I want to inundate myself with work and just get in a flow. And doing a lot of things at once has a great benefit. Even if you're deep into your career, sometimes that's a great thing. But it certainly seems to be where you and I are both at, where let's reduce the peripheral things a bit more and see if we can go further in on projects that feel really interesting.
Yes.
Seems like a good way to be. Do you want to jump into a couple of questions?
Let's do it.
Lots of good things. Any updates on your new Clipper excitement? I know 2 weeks ago we were talking. You were sort of I like the process of talking about using a new thing. You're trying it on everything. It's working on some stuff. Eventually, you'll figure out.
It's working on everything.
It's working on everything right now.
Well, I was streaming with an artist yesterday doing notes, and the notes were very much like, can you turn my ad libs up at the end? Like, and there was like 23 ad libs, and trying to figure out which one was the focused one. And by the time we were turning them up, and then like that was the artist notes, and the producer notes is, hey, can we get a little more sub in the last chorus? It's like a new bass enters in this kind of scene change of a production moment in the bridge, and then that bass continues, and earlier in the song is a different bass. He's like, we have more sub at the end. And the sub at the end was a little bit too much after boosting it to get the full feeling that he wanted out of the this kind of like cinematic, gnarly stage shaking rumbly bass kind of thing that the clipper just couldn't hold up. So I was able to automate the sensitivity on this thing at the low end just for the bridge and the last chorus to dip down. It's like whatever it was a small incremental thing where I was able to move that down. The clipper stopped clipping the low end, but it didn't lose any loudness. It didn't lose any grit on the mid range and high end that I was already dialed in on. And that's something that I couldn't do with the T-Rex at all. Yeah. The slope on the T-Rex thing changes the feel of the whole thing, even by 0.1. It just changes the loudness. It changes everything. So this seems to have more flexibility. So just based on that, this is an obvious new tool for me to use and stay using.
What's the name of it again?
The Boz Big Clipper.
Boz Big Clipper.
And there's just so much more imagery and transparency to it. Not that the T-Rex can't be transparent, but it kind of sounds like it pushes everything forward versus something about this feels like it maybe has some sort of like release control where the back still stays in the back. The verbs don't come forward all the time with this. Like I can adjust the sensitivity of the mid-range to clip the mid-range less too, so that the musical bits can be a little bit more pure. I'm just realizing that there's a lot more ways to be geeky with it. It definitely makes me mix more. And I don't necessarily know how to say that in better words, but it inspires me to work harder in a sense where I see more possibility in the records. Sonically speaking, I'm EQing a bit more. I'm shaping things more. I feel like I'm doing more, and not because because I want to, because it needs it, and it's showcasing a dimension that I'm not used to having with the clipper. And I spent all last year mixing with a clipper on that felt like a little bit 2D, and there was enough 3D that maintained my aesthetic. But that was done with like kind of having to scoop out low mids, which I don't like to do because that to me is where the musical moments are. And I'm doing that less now with this clipper because it's just not making it as dense.
Yeah, it sounds like, and I'm using the shit out of the T-Rex clipper, but mostly I'm using it when I'm like making drums and making things slam. And you're right, it is great for more heavy-handed things. It has a great sound, but it is not terribly flexible. It sounds like this one is much better for your purposes, which is, presumably you're getting tracks that have the kind of density and crunch built into them, and then you are doing the finishing mixing stuff, which requires, or at least is beneficial for you to have some more flexibility with that. That's interesting.
Let me answer Kayla's question, because Kayla, I don't use a limiter at all. So I'm not doing it after a limiter on the mix bus. I use limiters on subgroups. I think you don't want to necessarily limit everything together to create the glue that people, I think that a limiter does on everything. I want to limit on different groups with different side chain levels of frequency. So I'm not limiting, bass in certain ranges, and I'm limiting a vocal differently than I would a keyboard group or something like that. So then the gain staging into the clipper is a bit more balanced before that, individually speaking, than as a whole. I don't really have any dynamic control on my mix bus except for this clipper.
And you do have some tube gear, which is going to do some amount of mild dynamic control or mild saturation, right?
Yeah.
What's the very last thing in your mix bus chain?
That clipper.
That clipper's the last thing.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. Yeah. Cool.
You just turn the ceiling down. And no, Kid Cutler, I'm not getting big overs on that at all. I lower the ceiling, so I'm delivering a mix theoretically at like minus 0.2 or something. I'm lowering my ceiling to the end, at the end of there.
You just make sure you're not coming out of that with any digital overs. That makes sense. There were some questions. I thought you might like this one. There were two separate questions. I'll read them both and we can kind of just riff on it. I think it's good. It was discussed a bit in the Discord as well. Check out the Discord for those that are not on it. Great place where a lot more than two people can answer your questions and you can discuss and get feedback. One person asked, how do you make people want to work with you when you are at early stages of your career? And then another question, and again, I think these are very related. Zach asked how to make a comfortable space for clients, light, aesthetic, room arrangement, etc. I think the big thing when starting out is to just be, one, be nice to be around, do great work. Those are the two main things, and it's actually as easy as that. But I think that there's a lot of people. I used to be one of them, maybe still am. Jon used to be / maybe still is, especially with the hair today. We are people who spend a lot of time in a room by themselves, not really thinking about much else and staring at a computer screen or staring at an instrument or whatever. And if you are going to be a professional record maker working with lots of different people, you do have to have a sense of how to put together a space and be the kind of person who people want to work with and interact with. Jon has a beautiful space there with lots of light and open ceilings and wood, and it's comfortable, and a beautiful kitchen, and he'll make you an espresso, and there's a nice couch, and it smells good. And, all of these things are actually hugely important. And especially when you're starting out, most people are just like all of us, starting in a basement or an apartment or whatever, and it's kind of dingy, and the couch has a rip in it, and whatever. Like, the more you can, in addition, again, number one is doing great work. Number two is be nice to deal with and consistent and reliable, the sort of obvious things. But having a space where people feel good to hang out. And how do you learn those things? How do you learn about aesthetics? I don't know. You just learn about this.
Let me jump in here. I guess this is my favorite part. I don't care about music. I don't care about music. I just want to be comfortable in my space.
I knew you'd love this. And you want people to be comfortable in your space too. You want people to like being there.
But if you look, the best way to do this, I actually sadly have never done this. I probably should have. Is like put together a mood board of places that you like, and whether it's a restaurant, a cafe, someone's house that you aspire to have a room like one day, furniture, colors, just do that, what you like. And like Mike Miller said up there, the space is supposed to be comfortable for you. I made this space for me, and then it just so happens the majority of people that come up here like it and feel comfortable. But I'm here, like you just said, we're alone in our rooms most of the time. So I made this space comfortable for me. I made it comfortable for me and my girlfriend during the pandemic because I was home all the time and we were sharing space up here, needed a bigger sofa and more space for that. Like, what is the reason, what is the feeling you want people to get coming into your space as well as what you want, and put yourself there first. Have some plants, have some light if you can. A lot of people don't have light in their studios. I'm going to go hard and just say, find another space. I know Matt does not have light in his studio.
I don't have light. Well, one of the things that, go ahead.
And if you don't create some sort of reflective surface, like maybe a mirror with a light, and create some sort of glow that mimics sunlight, have bright lights in your space, like care about the lighting, care about the smell. There's so many things to care about that you might think that you don't need to care about because you're focused on the song or focused on the, whatever, meeting people and going out, and then your space can be chaos. Like, I'm sure there's some order to your chaos to a degree, but finding the sweet spot for your comfort level in a workspace is going to enhance the way that other people feel their comfort level in your workspace. And that's what's going to get the best results. I can talk for a long
absolutely.
time.
And the couple of ways I think to get a quick lesson in this is to, one, go to other people's spaces and be like, oh, I like the way this feels, or it feels open, or I don't like this. Why does this not feel good in here? What's the seating like? Does it sound good where other people are sitting? Because you spend so much time sitting between your speakers Does it sound crazy where you have seating? Is the seating comfortable? You know, now that I've had this space for a couple of months, I'm only going to be here for a few months. There were like 4 people at the studio at some point in the last few weeks, and I realized I don't have enough seating. Like basic things that I just, you know, I've done this for a really long time. I just didn't really think about. There's a couch,
right?
There's a couple of seats, but you know, and it's music people, so a couple of people just sat on the floor and it was fine. There's not really enough space to put a lot of seats, but you know, interact with people and just be conscious of it. And you know, and then clean your place a little bit.
let me answer the above
clean up
question.
your dirty studio.
Let me answer the above question about why bright light is important. This is specifically for during the day, and it's worth referencing the Huberman Labs podcast on optimizing workspace, and where the above overhead bright lights hit the lower part of your eyes. Apparently your eyes are, I guess, upside down. Like, I'm not a scientist, so I'm not going to try to describe this, but the way overhead light hits your eyes will make you the most focused and productive during a certain phase of the day, until it turns into the nighttime, where you actually want the overhead lights to change, more low lighting, ambient lighting. But during the day, to be productive, you want bright lights. So if you have a dark space, just try turning on some bright lights overhead specifically, and that will draw your attention more focused towards productivity for the day.
I think that's that can be great advice. I don't know that I agree that you need bright lights in a recording studio, but everybody.
I'm not saying in the recording studio. I'm saying if you're trying to be productive, all I'm referencing is scientific studies saying that for productivity, that's the best way to do it. You can then choose if you want the best way to do it or not the best way to do it. And if you want to have vibe, I don't think you need fluorescent lights above you. I think that's going to ruin everyone's creative environment. So we're not going to walk into a Costco to make records. But to some degree, having overhead lights that are brighter than maybe your average dungeon would make the productivity a little bit higher.
Yeah, I don't know that that's okay. Well, we can disagree about that. I'm sure that the studies show that your circadian rhythm makes your brain more awake with higher lights. I think that's totally true. But we're also talking about hanging out in a recording studio and doing different things than trying to maximize circadian rhythm wakefulness.
No, you're trying to maximize productivity. I'm not maximizing circadian. I'm talking about maximizing productivity during the hours where your brain is most turned on for creative endeavors.
And there's some people that work best after 5 p.m., so maybe it doesn't apply. So who knows? Whatever works for you. Maybe overhead lighting is the right thing. Try it out. That's the other thing. Try things out and see what happens with it. But definitely, when you're starting out in your career, you can actually very quickly accelerate beyond your peers by having the place that's the most fun to hang out and make stuff. That's certainly, I've made once I hung out in Eric Ballantyne's studio when I was 19, I was like, this place is awesome. How can I make every space ever feel like this? And so getting to a place where it just feels good to be there. And like you said, I think the number one thing is making a space that you feel really good in, that other people can also be in, feels like the most important thing, for sure. And smell too. I've definitely been in some studios that smell bad, and you don't want to do that. Let's see. I like this question too. Spangler asked, how do you know when to take on a project that's out of your comfort zone to grow or pass it to someone else? And I think those are really, I don't know if it's a sort of a simple answer, but there isn't like a straightforward answer, which is, it depends on who you are. I mean, what I realized at a certain point, my whole career is constantly trying to do things that I don't know how to do, because if I do the same thing over and over, I lose interest in it. I'm not that great at it. The work doesn't tend to be as good. But that's my own sort of like manic personality. So I'm aggressively trying. That's why I've worked on country records and pop records and dance records and heavy rock records and hip hop and whatever, because I like going to places where I don't really know what I'm doing. Now there's relative levels of that, like going completely out of your comfort zone and doing something you have no idea how to do. I mean, maybe it's too much for some people, but there's also people, I mean, this is something you and I have talked about with you being a producer and then realizing that you got a lot of enjoyment about going deeper and deeper into the mixing thing and the refining thing, that really worked with your brain and your personality. And I think for a lot of people, you don't know that until you try a bunch of stuff. I think I don't know where I sit on the spectrum of what's normal for people, but I get really, like when I had my first successful song, immediately there were lots of opportunities to do things like that. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. That's what you do. And I was just miserable like when I had the first big One Direction thing, there's a bunch of stuff that I've done where immediately people want me to do something similar. And I'm just like, I don't like this. I don't want to produce another song like this. But yet, someone like you, where you're like, I've done productions, I've done different things. I really like this mixing thing. You can go, same thing, like talking about the Clipper is the perfect example where you're like, I want to go tweak and go deeper and see how much better I can make this. And I think it's just based on your personality. And I think it's worth trying a bunch of stuff. I don't know. You got thoughts?
Yeah, I don't know. That's a tricky one because if an artist is two thoughts here. If an artist is coming to you and they think that you're capable of doing this, or a team is coming to you, then maybe they know something you don't know and they want your take on this type of record. Are you a fast learner? Can you watch some tutorials on how to make certain sounds? Do you understand the genre? You got to assess it yourself before saying yes, because at the end of the day, it's about the client. It's about the artist. It's not really about you. So if you're someone like Matt, who kind of understands multi-genre and a lot of technical ways to get to a desired result, I'm sure he can reverse engineer any sound and go for that. Like, are you that type of person? Or do you plug in a guitar and you're really good at guitar records and they're asking you to do some like deep house cut and you just don't understand that thing? You're going to learn it for this first time on this artist. Well, what level is the artist? How much pressure is on this artist? Are they down to experiment, or are they looking for a radio smash right away? It's like, well, you got to assess all the circumstances, but mostly, are you going to be confident in the finished product? And that's the thing to point at for yourself. Do you feel confident that you're going to come out with something that is, worthy of being released for the level of artistry that this artist is expecting? And you might be the wrong person for the job and then lose that by not delivering what they want and then not get hired again because you tried something that's not your thing, versus, oh, interesting, let me try a track like this without this artist and then come back to them in a day and say, oh, I actually figured out what this is. Like, I don't know if I would attempt it on the first time you're asked. I don't know. I've never even thought of this. Like,
I know it's
as a possibility. I just love every genre and I listen to so much music. So I'm more inclined to just say do it and fuck it. But I also think that my experience with artists wanting something from you that you don't naturally give them is never really works out, to the degree that you think it could.
Yeah, I think you're right in the sense it's like, if it feels interesting and somebody's like, can you do this? And you're like, I don't know if I can, but I'd like to try, then go do it. I mean,
the other way to think about it is, and I don't know, you've probably done this, is if I were to be asked to produce something that's not my forte, but I have a friend that it is, then you co-produce. So they're coming to you for some sort of aesthetic. I do that a lot. And you bring in the homie that's like, oh, I know how to do this. Like, I know how to do that bass line thing that they want. Like that kind of record, so-and-so knows how to do it, bring them in, and then co-produce it, and you finish it, and you have the vision with the artist, because you have the relationship.
That's a really good point, and I realize that's actually what my personality really is. It's not, I do like doing things out of my comfort zone. I like learning new things. I basically became a producer because, like, I liked playing Nirvana songs, and I loved Snoop Dogg, and I had a friend who could rap and another friend who could play drums, and and so I just was like, let me just figure it all out. So I learned little bits of things, but that's really what it is for me. Is I like being the person. I like being the person that somebody goes, hey, can you figure this out? And I go, I'll figure it out. I like figuring it out. I like bringing on co-producers. I like connecting people. I like getting in a room and saying, what's the vision? Let me help you figure it out. I mean, that's like the producer brain, which makes me all over the place. But that's my personality. Not everybody who watches these things wants to do that. So some people want to be in a room and be like, how tweaky can I get? And it's, there's a spectrum of these things.
I think it's too much to put on yourself to say that you can do everything as well as someone else can.
Totally.
I think it's too much pressure for yourself. And then there's some sort of white lie going on there to the artist or the producer that, is asking you to do this. Like, that's a great question, because I don't really know that anybody at the top of their game can't do everything. Like they can figure out a way to make a country record sound great if they mix hip hop, but it might not be right for the genre. And maybe in that moment you find the thing that then turns country into something crazy.
The new hybrid.
So, the new hybrid.
Totally.
Like maybe, I'm on a country record now, kind of doing that. There's a lot more low end in this country album I'm mixing than I hear anywhere else. And that's either going to be, understood and accepted by the fan base or by country radio. One of the songs is a #1 on country radio, and we're doing another album. So like maybe. Also, I've never said that publicly because I don't want to get hired for too much country, but apparently I have like big country records, which is hilarious to me.
What's the song?
Nico Moon is the artist. Wait, I don't want to talk about this right now.
Okay. By the way, just as an aside, one thing that's dope about country that I always thought is they have a lot of, is it low B on like a fifth string? I feel like you can get so much low end out of the live bass of a good, because those are real players, like a really even low, like a 5-string bass. You could really thump there like a 808. I hope you're doing that.
So I am.
Sorry, continue.
I guess what I'm saying is that, maybe you'll find that time that happens rarely, that you're going to like cross genre, with an artist because you're the perfect fit for this, other way to do this thing. To answer the question honestly, I would collaborate with the person that is better at the thing that they're asking for than you, but stay involved because maybe you're the trusted, source of collaboration.
Look, I think the truth is, every situation's different, and I think the flip side. We could argue both sides. Like I could make good arguments for both sides of it, and it's going to be because the other side is fake it till you make it. Just go figure it out, learn as you go, get in the room, say yes to things, see what the fuck happens. If they don't like it, they don't like it, and move on. Like I like that attitude too. And
I like that attitude too.
I think it's worth trying and figuring out what your personality is, and ultimately, obviously, we are, like you said, we are in an era where. Collaboration is everything. So if somebody wants you to be involved, go be involved and figure out how to get it done.
I think I'm at a place where I want the record for the artist to be the best it can. And if I'm not the best for it, I'm okay with it. Just knowing that I'm not the best for it.
Yes.
Even though it could be an artist that I really want to work with. And get the chance, and then I hear it come out, and I'm like, oh, well, that wasn't, like, I get why they didn't like what I did. That wasn't right. Or maybe it wasn't right for where they're at in their career, and this version of it could be cool as well. But I understand why, and I think that's more important. So I like what you're saying, because if you were to do it, and then your version of the record as a producer or a mixer or whatever it is doesn't come out, you get to understand why someone chose the other thing. And then you can either take bits from that and understand it for the next time, or just learn like that's not your thing. And there's something to learn by it not working out, right? There's more to learn from failure than success all the time. So if you can still try, it's probably worth the attempt. So I think the roundabout of this long, answer to this question is probably just say yes and try it and see what happens.
Yeah, and then at a certain point, of course, you're going to hand it off to other people. You're going to get to, a lot of my career in the last 5 years or so has been, 5 or 6 years has been younger producers writing a song with an artist. The label gets excited. The younger producer takes it as far as it can go and can't quite get it there. And then they bring me in. I had that happen early in my career where I had records that were taken away from me. But the reality is I didn't quite know how to get it there, or somebody else mixed it or whatever. That's part of the process. And I think, going through that is like you said, a huge learning experience. Trying failing is a huge teacher. That's how you get better.
That's also a big part of my mentorship with Tony and the way that I mentor my proteges is a lot of times what I'm noticing from mixes that the younger engineers are either putting out, and they're actually released for whatever reason, or they're sending to me for notes, is they don't sound finished. And my mixes didn't sound finished, at a time of my career. And Tony would be like, sounds really good, but it doesn't sound done yet. And he would jump on it. I would start things, he would finish them, or vice versa. We'd play off each other, and that was what was really fun. But the thing he always said was, it just doesn't sound finished. And I don't quite know why yet. Like, let's open it up. It's not like he can just pick. Like, I can't just listen to someone's mix and go, that doesn't sound finished, here's why. It's just like, it doesn't feel cohesive like a record. It's sharp on the edges. There's no like rounded off vignette of what this thing should feel. It's not cropped. Like, it just sounds like endless. A lot of young mixes just sound like almost too good. And you're like, oh, that person mixed it. It's like, whoa, you are really good at EQ. And it just sounds sterile and it doesn't move right. The hi-hats are straight. Nobody nudged them off the kick. It's just like, ugh, that's a little bit grimy and not a good way, and like cringy, too good. And that was what Tony taught me. So that was an early lesson. And what you're explaining is the production isn't quite right yet. And then you get to be in the room, whether it's with Eric or like for my best friend Tyler, like being in the room with Jeff Basker, like getting to be like, this is why it's not done. Like this section, this bridge, the chords don't move right. Like this thing isn't working yet, and here's why I think so. And then if it then gets better at the end, you just learn something. And if you don't like how it got in the end, then you realize that your instinct was good and you don't prefer that ending. And it still comes out because so-and-so put their name on it. It's their record, but you get to decide what you prefer based on some sort of consensus of who decided to say, yes, this was better for this. And until you have that you're in the room, you're doing it all by yourself, it's hard to know what you're good at and what you're not good at. You definitely need, this comes back to one of our first conversations like a year ago, like what the importance of feedback and trusted people in your life that like you might send me, like I do this to, I do this with homies all the time, where I'll just like send a quick link and I'll do it to Dale. We touched on this a little bit in the mastering conversation. Like I'll just send a listen to a link and just say like, is this close? Like, what's this? Am I doing a good job? And like with records,
I'm gonna send you a record today.
Do it, please. I'll listen in. And like, I don't know. I mean, if it's on my speakers, I can give real notes in real time. And I love doing that for people. When I used to make beats and produce, I would always, before an artist heard it, I would play it for a homie. Like, do you think this is tight? I think that part is, look, this is also coming from someone like we started earlier saying, I'm going to get in the room by myself a lot of the time. And I kind of miss the social experience of being in a group studio where there's like 4 or 5 rooms where you never know who's coming in during the day, or exactly who's in, and you just get to chill, over a glass of water or an espresso, and you just get to meet up and hear what people are doing. I'm not really engaged in that, being in my own space, which has its perks as well. But the feedback of being like, yo, come in, check this out, like that is happening in a lot of places. I at least I hope. And that's a way to really understand, are you doing this thing that someone's asking you to do correctly? Because you'll get feedback in real time of like, actually, I used to play things for Spider, and Spider would be like, oh, I see what you're going for. And then like play me an obscure reference from 1960 where they did it better than me, or like from the 90s where they just did it better than me. But it's not that. But his point was, you nail the understanding of what this is supposed to be, but maybe just do the sound that it's supposed to be. Like not some obscure, massive bass sound back in the day. Like this is actually, a 303. Like why don't you just use the 303 and then treat it modernly, do something new with it, like actually understand the reference point and then take it to the next level, which is I think what the whole, Weekend album was. It's like a recreation of these things that have happened and then just done with a little bit,
modern tools and modern aesthetic.
But that comes from feedback. That comes from playing things for people and getting feedback.
And by the way, we did I think 2 full hours. People should check those out. I think it's in the 30s, the full hours on finishing. We did 2 hours where we just talked about finishing and answered questions. So people should definitely check that out if they're interested in this topic on the YouTube. Check it out. Subscribe. Thank you. There are a couple of things I was thinking as you were talking about that. One of them is this phenomenon, which we've talked about before, which I am fascinated by and will mention it every chance I get, which is when you play stuff for people in a room, if you've been by yourself in a room on the same speakers, by yourself making a thing, and the only thing that changes is somebody sitting on the couch and you press play, you will hear it differently And it's, we could theorize as to why that is, but everybody who I talk to, you're nodding your head. It's the same thing where just having someone else in the room listening to a thing that you've maybe lost perspective on, you don't have to look at them. You're listening on your same speakers. You don't even have to get feedback. You will hear the record differently. There's something about being a human being around other human beings, listening to music that is different than being by yourself. The value of that is huge.
Oh my God. I get
crazy.
I get visceral responses. I start sweating
every
sometimes.
time. I start sweating. And when you start sweating is when you know that this thing isn't loud enough. This isn't right yet. This chorus is too long.
It's not even hot in here. Why am I sweating?
No, I'm like bored. I'm like, oh, we did not need that post to be twice as long. And I'm literally just looking at the speakers, listening to the thing that I've listened to 1,500 times, and I immediately know things that are wrong with it. There's a lot of phenomenon like that. I mean, the idea of learning how to finish records is still this kind of crazy mystery. There was another
sometimes
thing,
though, sometimes the opposite happens, and you play it with someone else in the room, and you go, "Damn, that's good."
Yeah, this is done. I'm confident. I feel good.
Okay, yes,
totally.
Sorry,
totally.
you were about to say something.
You get a deeper perspective. It's really important.
Yeah.
The other thing I was going to say, there was a question on the Discord about how to learn how to hear compression. And I think this applies to what we're talking about with finishing too, which is it's not like a black or white thing. Like you're going to do a bunch of stuff and then all of a sudden it's going to make sense. It's a progression over time where you get deeper and deeper into learning about how a thing sounds and how things, with compression, it's like you can use a compressor or a limiter or saturator. We've done lots of discussions about compression. But learning how things sound learning what compression is and what compression sounds like is something that just takes time and experience, and you'll try it and you'll be like, is it doing anything? There's a lot of that when you're starting out. Even now, sometimes I put something on, I'm like, I don't really know if it's different. It kind of, it's subtle. Maybe it's A, B, but it's the same thing with finishing where you're like, I think this is done. Maybe it's done. I don't really know. And then someone goes, no, it needs to be this. And you're like, oh, I never would have heard that until this one little thing. Now it's in the back of my brain for the next 1,000 records that I make. These things just take time. And we get back to what we always talk about, which is, it's just, if you want to be great at this, it's no shortcuts. You just got to put in the time. And you can watch a million videos on compression or watch us talk for 2 hours about finishing things. But the best way to learn about finishing records is to try to finish a whole bunch of records. The best way to learn about compression is compress a bunch of stuff for a long time over and over, try different tools and see what happens. It's just, but it's okay not to, again, like I said, the last bunch of years of my career, a lot of it has been I'm finishing other people's productions, but that's actually a really valuable thing for those producers. And the ones that are smart will immediately go, tell me every single thing that you did. And I'll go, okay, well, here's what I did. The low end, the two different elements were a little bit out of phase, but I actually nudged the bass a little bit behind the kick drum, and that's what gives it that lean. And they go, oh, I never would have thought about, those sort of things. You have those conversations. They're always opportunities to learn. I had
experience just talking about hearing things and like, what does compression sound like? Well, I wanted to say a couple things. One, I remember when I got the decapitator for the first time when it came out, it was the new tool, and I just used it on it. Just use it on everything, like literally
still a great tool, but
I use it every now and then. Like 1 in 10 mixes have a decapitator.
I'm producing, so it's like as a creative tool, it's incredible. It's incredible.
So you try it. Like you want to know what compression sounds like? Compress every fucking sound.
Yeah,
it doesn't mean you have to leave it on. And then that takes me to the thought of I've been going back to physical therapy and had a great experience last week, and it was the first time where he was actually training a student. And he was explaining why he was doing certain things. And at one point, like I'm exacerbated, like breathing just based on a stretch that was happening to my lower back. And, he was just going in on, it's always about the why. I can figure out any physical way to get to answer the why, but we have to know why we're treating a thing to get to the thing, to get to the result, because I've been doing this for many decades, and I can figure out any way to do the thing, because he decided for the first time to use cupping on me. He's never cupped me before, and he was asked why then. He's like, it's the fastest way to do what I need to do on this part. Like he just answered it beautifully, and it was always about the why. And when I think about compression or any tool, I always think what my desired result is. Why am I doing this? I never just reach for the tool. It's always, and I've been compressing more now because after a whole year of being anti-compression, which is just a funny thing to say in that term, I've been now on a couple of records, like it needs compression. It wants it. But why? Because it needs this kind of like anxiety. It needs this kind of like aggressive energy in the drums or in the vocal that just, it won't be the same type of record without it. They're referencing a certain era of music that just, that's what it sounded like. But because I know that type of music, I know that genre, understand the desired result, I'm just going to do it my own way, but I know why I'm doing it. I'm not doing it only because someone told me that it should be compressed, right? Same thing with an EQ, same thing with a filter, same thing with a limiter, same thing with distortion. Know what you're going for and why, and that's going to be the way to do it all the time.
I love the word anxiety for compression because I had that exact thought yesterday on a song that I'm working on right now. I wrote a song with this artist, Sam Fisher, at the end of last week. And, you know, I'm recorded on the U47. He's an unbelievable singer. And I was like, okay, cool. This is open. There's some drums on it. There's some bounce, but his vocal is so open. I'm not going to do too much compression on it because I want that dynamic in his vocal. And I was listening to it and I was like, this sounds really good. Let me just throw a little of the devil lock, that like crazy distortion thing at like 10%, which I like to do sometimes to kind of bring up the ambience. And what it did just early in the chain is it just brought up more of his breath and more of, and it felt more anxious and it fit the lyric really well.
Exactly.
And it was better. Even though like technically, sonically, and this was, we only have 10 minutes left. I kind of wanted to get into this conversation too, but maybe we'll save it for another week. This idea of what you're supposed to do and what sounds good is, if you take that concept of like what sounds good or what a good mix is. I would have put a bunch of posts like this on the Live with Matt Rad a couple of days ago about mixes that are supposedly bad mixes or not like technically good mixes, but that are effective. Ultimately, you have to always remember that we are doing these things in the service of the song and the vocal and the art and the intent, the why, as you said. So things that are quote unquote wrong or incorrect, or you want things to be more dynamic, and then all of a sudden you're like compressing it a bunch more, and it's like, nah, this fits it really much, much better, even though like technically it might not be the right thing in the moment. It's always the right decision to go after the emotion of the song, at least in my experience. It's just funny you said anxiety, because I had that exact word in my head when I added that little bit of like crunch limiting into it, and all of a sudden the vocal, like, it just made me go, and that's what the lyric is, and it was like, that's what it's supposed to feel. It literally is talking about like generational family anxiety. Like that's the lyric. It's like all of a sudden it came forward and just like got chills.
Because
it was amazing.
You can have I'm glad we went on that specific version of compression, because you could also have a smooth, slow release, blossoming compression on a piano that brings up the sustain and makes it feel, feel more lush and long and full and occupy more space. That's the opposite type of compression than this like fast, aggressive anxiety type compression that I'm hearing. That's what pop, like the sound of pop for so long is over compressed, fast attack, fast release, like really aggressive, audible compression, not the subtle like leveling of sounds, right? Like you can do that too. I think there are better tools to do that now. We've talked about for hours and hours about clip gain and like, and limiting and just more subtle versions of this. But we're talking about a very specific effect from compression that, to me right now, the only way I want to use compression is for that thing that we're describing right now. I think there are better tools that have, joined us in the later decades of record making that we don't have to use compression for that leveling effect. I think we use it for that anxiety-inducing density and aggression that is of a certain type.
And by the way,
you can't get any other way.
And again, it's hard because we're so ingrained in the words, but the distinction between compression and a compressor. I was even talking about compressing the sound more, but I'm using the Devil Lock Deluxe, one of the Sound Toys things. I don't think it's even called a compressor.
But it has a compressor built in.
Yeah, but it's like a distortion saturator, compressor limiter, something. It's just a thing that compresses the sound.
Yeah.
And so it's important to remember that there's, again, as we've talked about many, many times, there's probably, if you super cut it together, there's probably like 6 hours of us talking about compression, compressors, saturators, limiters, and all of that. But however you get it done, the sound is obviously the thing that you're after. Let's see if there's a couple of quick things. This question continues to get asked. I feel like we've talked about it a little bit, but maybe we touch on it again. Casey asked, lead vocal treatment versus bus, background vocals, things like that. I think that it's a hard question to answer. I mean, you've talked about doing...
What is the question?
How do you treat lead vocals versus background vocals? Do you do different busing?
We've talked about this before. Yeah.
Well, I just want to say that I think a lot of it, I assume, as a mixer, depends a huge amount on what the vocal production is. Like I just watched recently, Kook Harrell, I don't know how to say his last name, I think, has a clip about doing vocals on YouTube, but talking about, you're singing the layers of vocals. Sometimes you sing the doubles the same way. Sometimes you sing the doubles a little softer. Sometimes they're a little more airy. And how those things stack up and add up, I think dictates a lot of what you try to do in the mix, because sometimes you might get a lead vocal and then two doubles or a double and triple that are exactly the same. You want to treat them the same because you're trying to the intent is to get a 3 lead vocal sound. And sometimes there's a lead vocal and a bunch of backgrounds. It just depends on what you're trying to do. I don't know if you have any. We've talked.
No, I mean, I'm a proponent for the mono lead always sticking out, just because on multi-device types, like that's going to be more important. So I was going to bring up the example of if it's supposed to be a left, right, center, like same vocal approach, it's full voice. I'm still doing things to keep the sides just a hair back, to not take over from the other instruments that are on the sides. It could be like, a driving punk guitar, for example, on this record that I'm doing right now, that the vocals are full on the whole way through, but it's also guitars. And back and forth on a couple of mixed versions with the producer, we've like lowered the sides a little bit, where it sounds gnarly when they're all equal and they just sound full. But I wound up like cutting some mid-range in the sides and just pushing them back subtly. It might not be a volume thing, it might be like there's more transients on the mono and there's less on the sides, or there's a bit more of a blur on the sides in the presence ranges that like set them back just subtly so other things can sit on top of it. But a lot of the time it's in the vocal production, like you're saying, if you just sing it differently, sing it on a different mic. I used to do that. I don't know why people aren't doing that. It's just that I think it's pure laziness, being in the studio with only one mic and you're singing every fucking vocal on the same mic through the same preamp, the same chain. It's like, do yourself a favor and get a second mic. Cheap, who the fuck cares? Just something different. I just don't understand why this is not like the go-to protocol and what changed in bedroom production. This is like a recording 101 for however long the best records were being made, that you don't sing the backgrounds on the same mic. It's just too much of the same character, too much of the same box. Then I would take the opposite point of view on that, with maybe this idea that the left, right, center should be pretty similar. Then maybe you would do that. I would still do it on a different microphone. If it were me, if I'm actually going to give any advice, which is hard for us to do on this, I would sing all vocals on a ribbon mic, but I would do backgrounds on a ribbon mic and use your tube, large diaphragm condenser, for the mono lead vocal. And that will naturally put the backgrounds in a different space.
Yeah, I think it's all taste. Like, I mean, you can do it any kind of way, and even the difference.
Taste is cool, but I swear, I'm pretty sure this is laziness. I think it's pretty. I think most people just have one mic. There's no good reason not to, unless you can't afford a second mic, because then obviously I understand that. Oh, but if you're in a studio, no, because the reason why. What?
If you want the vocals to sound the same.
Yeah, but you want the high harmony to sound the same as the lead? Like, give me a good argument for why the high. Well, no, there's just no good reason for it's a different performance. It's a whole different thing. Why would you want? Anyway, what I'm saying is, if you were to have, like, I know people go fast. So it's like, oh, let's stack this. You just put two microphones next to each other, and for the backgrounds, they know to step 1 foot to the left and sing that. There's not going to be a phasing issue. You just have both mics on. unmute one, mute the other one, deal with it later. Just have 2 mics in the booth. It's just not that hard.
Yeah, I mean, try it. I don't know if it's,
try it.
I don't feel that strongly about it. Just try it.
As a mixer, we're talking about the perspective of finishing records, right? And as a mixer, when I get asked, this is a common question from a lot of producers, you know, how did you get my backgrounds to sound, you know, still glued together but have their own space? And it's a lot of the opposite types of treatment that you wouldn't have to do if you just had another mic preamp situation going on. It would answer their questions right away, because it's a concern of a lot of producers. And that's why I'm being a bit more passionate about this response. It's a very common thing. And then when I say that to them, you know, in the privacy of our conversations, like, yeah, I know I should do that, but the artist just wants to stack and stack and stack. And you're like, well, put up another mic and they can stack on that mic. Like, I don't know. I've been doing this for decades and I've never had 2 mics up.
Yeah, I mean, you look, anything you do with the background vocals that's not the same as the lead vocal will help. So even just things like step a foot back. You know,
agreed, Spider. More mic than preamp, yes.
Yeah, definitely. As we've definitely talked about that before. It's like if you have a mic compressor preamp as your vocal chain, changing the mic is going to make more of a difference than anything else. There was some other question that in the middle of that I wanted to. Now I can't remember what it was.
Floating spaces. Fuck yeah! Set that mic up.
Somebody Tony asked, does monitor placement matter, horizontal or vertical, with or without stands? We just put up a clip from the great conversation with Spider and Rory up on the Live with Matt Rad, so go check that out. We're putting up clips from that conversation, which people seem to get a lot of value out of, talking to them about doing some kind of follow-up. But there's a 9-minute clip on the Live with Matt Rad Instagram that's entirely about monitor placement. And the answer to the question of does monitor placement matter? Yes, it does. It matters quite a bit.
I think, hold on 1 second. Can I jump back to the previous thing? I think there's always going to be a way to defend the why people do things the way they do, because they're just doing it the way they do. And like, you don't want to get in the way of the vibe. You want people to have instinct and capture. So like, setting up a second mic might take time. That's why you would do it before the session. It's like when you go into a session with an artist and say you're at East West and there's an assistant there, like this is something that comes up in the setup before the artist gets there, right? It's different when you're at your house, in your bedroom, in your apartment, and like you don't know what's happening that day. Like maybe you can set up a second mic. There's just the way that records have been made for so long has been pretty dominantly lost, right? And I'm not trying to be like, oh, we should all make records like Michael Jackson did or of a certain time. But
that reminded me, I was going to say, keep going. Sorry.
But there are certain basics that one would learn, during the time of the golden age of recording versus the golden age of bedroom production and independent production. There's like a time of recording that was like, this is what we're all coming back to and listening to and inspired by anyway. And those that aren't are lying. They're taking examples and then, just saying like, oh, we do it this way now. Like we like distortion and we like clipping and we like this. Well, you like it for a reason, but there's also reasons not to, right? I think they're respecting and understanding, like someone said, well, you could do it all with EQ. It's like, you can, but I've been in so many mix sessions on ridiculously, important, successful releases that there are no EQs on so many of the sounds because the producer dialed in the sound of the thing with the way I'm talking about, which is with proper recording and using different synthesizers in different sections and different boxes, as I would call it. Like you don't want your music to sound like it's coming out of the same box. There's a reason why you have one amp on the left and one amp on the right with a different pickup for a guitar. Otherwise, it sounds phasey and makes your guitar sound small. The way to get guitars super wide is to use a different pickup or a different guitar. And these are things that are lost in the art of making records that I think you and I kind of have a responsibility to bring to light just enough of it to give someone an opportunity to realize that there could be another way to do it. And that's the reason for the passion behind this.
The chat's going crazy. I love it. The last thing, we can end it here. On that note, it's on YouTube. Everybody should go listen to the acapella for The Way You Make Me Feel, Michael Jackson. Because
exactly
the chorus is a super rhythmic, the way you make me feel. Like every rhythm is perfect. Like every breath is on a beat. And then the background vocals are this like sweet, the way you make me feel. And he's doing a very different performance to contrast it. I never noticed it the million times I heard that song until I listened to the acapella. So the acapella, Michael Jackson.
And he always had multiple mics set up in the studio.
I like people are saying, I'm going to buy 10 new mics and do it in Atmos and just go crazy. All right.
That was fun.
There's more to talk about, but there's always more to talk about. So,
I won't. Yeah. I'll be traveling next Tuesday during this time. So get someone else, just so you know.
I'll try to have Matt Beckley on. We'll talk about guitars and guitar amps and pedals and all that kind of stuff. A lot of people would ask some questions about that.
I could jump back on the week after or whatever.
Sounds good. All right.
Can't wait.
Thank you. Love you, John.
Talk to you soon. Love you too.
Bye guys.